webs right here at Coast FM 963. It's our Monday breakfast show with Pete Little, and joining us now at the at our breakfast table, shall we say, Mr.
At the breakfast table. Where's the toast?
You want to feed as well, do you? Before we start off today, Edgar drops in every Monday to talk business on the coast. Thank you for your donation too, on behalf of your business, to the Central Coast Coast FM Radiothon appeal.
Our pleasure. You do a great job, this station. You really do.
Well, thank you, Edgar. Lovely to hear from you. And today, of course, in the news, we've got national news today about the fact that the Adelaide has left Sydney.
Yes.
Has left Port Jackson.
Has left Port Jackson. I would say, as we talk, she's outside the heads.
On the way.
And on her way up to, well, we call it Avoca or Terrigal. What will we call it?
Off both of those. Off Avoca and Terrigal. So all the protests are probably still coming forward in
well, they haven't given up.
Shapes and forms.
They haven't given up. There's still 2 days to go. There's Monday and Tuesday yet, but I think they've run out of plausible ideas. Let's say that.
Yeah.
Yes. Once we get it down, we'll be right.
Now, the other thing we didn't mention last week too, which is important, the mere fact that the elections have put 4 Liberal candidates successfully into the local seats. What other changes? I mean, we talked about the chance of our 2 local council areas being amalgamated into one.
Yes,
the other thing too that you mentioned very, very briefly last week was this thing called Part 3A. Now, what's that?
Well, Part 3A of the Planning Act was a situation where the minister could call in a development application that had got bogged down in the local council.
Right.
And he could call it in, provided it was over, just forget the exact amount of money, to be honest with you, or it would generate so many jobs. It was fairly big amount, $100 million type stuff. I think it might have been 50, but they could call it in. But the trouble was, they did that, and they called all these DAs in, and then they had no way of handling them. And so there's dozens and dozens and dozens of big projects being held up in the pub.
So any Central Coast projects being affected by that?
Yes, well, in particular, there's the Warnervale, Woolworths Warnervale project. Their development at Warnervale, as part of the Warnervale Town Centre development. Yeah. And of course, Westfields have got a DA in for that area of land of theirs between the centre and where the abattoirs was there between the expressway and the shopping centre itself. So it's a pretty big area of land, and they're keen to do something about it. Sure. So anyway, the mayor of Wyong came out last week and said we want those 2 DAs back ASAP so that we can look at them. Of course, Peter, I've got to say this. If you go back to the years when the government called them in, the councils were prevaricating unbelievably on these issues.
Well, it wasn't compulsory they went to the state government, only if the local council couldn't get approval, is that right, or couldn't agree?
Well, what was happening was that the council couldn't agree about these things, and so the government, the proponent, could go to the government and say, look, this is a big development. This is state significant. That's what the term was called. This is state significant. We want the government to adjudicate on this, you see. Yeah. So that's what was happening. But prior to that, the councils would get them. There'd be arguments among the councillors about whether it's too big, too small. All the minority groups would have a little say. And anyway, it became a big issue across the state because they call all these things in. And some of the stuff they called in probably was not what the community wanted. Well, it probably wasn't in some respects. So it became a big political issue. Farrell said, we'll abolish it, which he's done. Of course, now he's got a problem on his hands. If you've got a new development coming in that's state significant, that can be just a big development, and the local council says, it's too high, or it's too this, or it's too this, or too something else.
You've got to take it to Land and Environment Court.
Can't take it anywhere.
Oh, you can't take it anywhere? No. I thought the council is the final arbitrator.
Well, then you can take it to the Land and Environment Court.
Oh, okay.
Do you see? But the council can muck around, as they've been doing. Like Gosford Council are experts at this. And I've got to say, so was Wyong. So, in Wyong we've got a new culture up there. You've got a new general manager. We've talked about that before. and they've got a lot of situations in place that, pardon me, the administration's changed so that they can look at these things and say, yeah, well, this is good.
And not let, say, minority interests impact them as much as perhaps in the past.
Well, that's right. That's right. Okay. So that's and those two developments, they account for a fair bit of investment, a lot of jobs, a lot of jobs in those two developments. So the sooner the government can get them back to council, the better, in my opinion.
Now, we need the jobs, but gee, I tell you what, the other day in the paper I read where the national job unemployed now is below 5%.
Yes.
I mean, it hasn't been that way for 30 years?
Something like that, yep.
And in fact, New South Wales had the highest unemployment.
Yeah.
And it was like 5.1.
Yes, yeah.
And you had other states like Western Australia. It was like 4.1. Yeah. I mean, hello. Where do you go to get a gig? Western Australia.
Well, this is right. Yeah. This is right. Western Australia's got a whole lot of problems because a lot of the investment that's going into Western Australia, it's not really being seen in the actual construction, because a lot of the construction work is being done overseas and shipped in.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's not quite what it sounds. But nevertheless, that's the way it is. And we do have...
It takes men and women to operate these services.
Oh, once they're in, this is true. But you've got to remember these big developments take very few people to look after them, to operate them.
Yeah.
But
there's only one person per truck, isn't it?
Well, one person per truck. Well, this is true. When you look at the size of those trucks, though, Peter,
it moves a lot of dirt.
A lot of dirt, and they say the best drivers in those trucks are women. Are you aware of that?
That's right. Yes.
Anyway, that's another issue for the minute. That doesn't alter the fact that youth unemployment on the Central Coast is still
well. This is the
far
point
too
I was
high.
going to make, and I forgot to. The fact that the national unemployment is about 4.9, and here on the coast it would probably be still around about the 8%.
Yes, yeah. In terms of youth unemployment,
youth unemployment, yeah. One stage it was like 15%. Well,
so
clearly there's work in Sydney and Newcastle and those major employee districts. But if you want to find work locally, it's got to come from.
Oh, there's no work locally.
Yeah.
There's no work locally. I don't talk to anybody. There's no big projects coming on, Peter. And there's no,
It's also tough for tradies at the moment too.
Tradies aren't doing real well. Yeah. Unless they're prepared to go elsewhere, and things are quieting down in the home construction business, even in the Hunter.
Uprooting your family and taking them off to Queensland for the work up there is not always practical, really.
Well, it doesn't always work out.
Right.
That becomes the issue. So,
well, there you go. So we're still facing those things, and as you mentioned, these major projects like Warrnambool Town Centre and other things that are on the drawing board could bring higher levels of prosperity.
Well, they could do. They could do. And of course, you've got to remember that the coal mine, the final knife hasn't gone into that coal mine yet. But
the final knife.
As good as the previous government said no, and Farrell said we'll be saying no. Yeah. So right now, there's no going.
That's the Duralong one, isn't it?
That's the Duralong one.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't have an issue with that.
No.
So I don't see that was going to create a lot of employment for the Central Coast.
No, that wouldn't have. Yeah. And I think environmentally not desirable either.
Well, that could be the case, but certainly they were soaking up a lot of good quality industrial land with their coal dump, and so that's another story.
Another story, indeed.
Yeah, for another time.
Well, thank you for coming by. Good to see you, bright and sparkling and cheery today.
It's a beautiful day. Why not?
And we'll catch you next week.
Okay.
Edgar Adams from the Central Coast Business Review, right here at Coast FM.